Go live. Go live button. Going live. Going live anyway. You're on.
Welcome to Game.Set.Chat live at a distance. I'm Chanda Rubin alongside Zina Garrison. When I say alongside, we're actually in our respective cities. I'm in Lafayette, Louisiana. Zina is in Houston, Texas, but we're happy that you're joining us today. And, we want to get started. For me, I had kind of this thought of the week, and Zina, I'll let you kind of jump in if you have one, but I was listening to this podcast today, The Body Serve, and the podcast was on the life and career of Zina Garrison. And it kind of blew my mind because I've been knowing you, Zina, for a long time, and there were still some things I did not know. I mean, it was such a good portrayal, just going through, year after year, all of the challenges you went through, all of the successes, the breakthroughs, and it was just phenomenal. I know you had a chance to listen to it. What did you think about it?
Well, first of all, I want to say to the hands out to the guys of the Body Serve, and they're from Canada. And but it was really weird listening to it because you're listening to things about how some person portrayed some of the things that you went through, and you never talked to them. But I would give them a 98% right on it, and
That's
it was very,
phenomenal.
yeah, actually, it was very even entertaining to me. And I did reach out to them and told them hands off, but it was very interesting, and it's a good show. So if people get a chance to go and check out their podcast, it's called The Body Serve. It is a really good one. And they did one on Monica Seles as well.
Yeah, I'm gonna definitely have to go back and look at some of the other things they've done because I was very impressed with the research, how they kind of got context for the things they were talking about. And we kind of touched on it, Zena, a couple of our shows, some of the big moments for you,
Yeah.
playing Chris Evert and the Olympics and all that. But it was just interesting to kind of hear it with the backdrop of everything that was going on, some of the articles that were being written. So it was phenomenal. So I really enjoyed that part. Was there anything this week, Zena, that kind of happened, stood out to you? Any interesting things going
Well,
on?
I'm really looking forward to talking to our good friend. So it's going to be, it was interesting to hear that she had went through the coronavirus. So I'll be interested to talk to her about that. But it really touches home when it's someone so close to you.
Yeah,
That you
absolutely.
know that actually has it. So looking forward to it. So other than that, I just been chilling. We had Easter and everything, and did a virtual Easter, and that was really fun.
I
So.
saw that. That's pretty cool. Got a lot of your family on, so they were technologically advanced enough to do that.
Well, let's say I called Jason and made sure that we were connected, and so I thought I did a pretty good job. I did freak out. I started to choke a little bit, but I came on through. But it was just nice to see everybody. Chandler, the funniest thing is nobody combed their hair. No one.
That's the one thing, you kind of forget when you're home hour upon hour. And a couple of times I was kind of going to see if somebody, was on my phone and doing the video thing. And I was like, oh my God, what just happened? So it's like, it's the easiest thing to forget. And you kind of take it for granted when you're out and about and doing things. But yeah, it's nice. It was nice to kind of have a little bit of from a distance, kind of chatting with my family as well and my parents and having them see the grandkids and stuff. So yeah, we had a good weekend as well, and we're managing. So, but I definitely want to keep going with our guests. But first, I want to mention, I try to kind of give everybody a sense of why we started this Game.Set.Chat, Zena and I. So very quickly, we just wanted to do something that could give back, that could keep us connected, keep all of you connected with tennis, with some of the personalities, the people that you've enjoyed over the years, and just give a little something back, and also to try to help Zina Garrison Academy. So it was twofold, and we came up with this idea on a Sunday. By Saturday, we were doing our first chat, and we've just been going from there. And it's just been a lot of fun. Zena and I kind of talk often about how quickly this hour goes. but we try to, give you guys a different viewpoint, and we also want to take your questions as well. So I'm going to be looking away periodically to my phone, looking at the questions on Facebook. So nothing's wrong if you see me doing that, but we definitely love to hear from you and hear your thoughts. But without further ado, maybe let's bring on our guest, Miss Katrina Adams, your friend Zina and mine for so many years. Hello, Katrina.
Hey, ladies.
How are you?
I'm great.
So good to have you on. Well, I want to
be here with you.
Well, of course, everybody, knows your resume. I'm certain of it, but I just want to mention, just very quickly, you're the immediate past president of the USTA. You are on the board of directors for the ITF currently. You're chairman of a couple of different committees still. You are a former player, 8 in the world in doubles, quarterfinals or better of all 4 majors, semifinals of Wimbledon, so many accolades, and you've translated it to being an executive in tennis. So, I mean, phenomenal. We're going to get you to talk about that a little bit, but, certainly welcome. And yeah, we're happy to have you.
Thank you.
Well, I'd just like to say this first. Katrina, you have all those new accolades as executive. Can we just be real on this show? We got a lot of stories.
That's I saw your post to say we got a lot of stories, and between spending my career with both of you, I can only imagine where they're going to go.
We'll keep it PG. We're just PG always. So
we're gonna keep it good.
Let's do it. Let's do it.
But yeah, I mean, so Katrina, I'm kind of curious. We've been on the board together, so you've been kind of a mentor to me and kind of giving me the lay of the land. Zina, you were on the board even before Katrina, as far as I understand, right? I mean,
yes.
For me, seeing the behind the scenes, being a little bit younger, learning, from you guys, how has it been for you sort of being in those positions? I'm going to start, first with you, Katrina, ascending to be the CEO, president and CEO of the USTA, first African-American in that position, one of the few women who have ascended to that position. I mean, how did that come about? How did you get there?
Wait, first of all, we are 3 of the 4 Black women on the USTA board in all these years. That says a lot. That speaks for itself. Speaks volumes. So, listen, it was an honor to be on the board, first of all, back in 2005, after Zina. Zina had stepped off by then, when she was the Fed Cup captain and became part of the staff and couldn't be on the board any longer. So I miss overlapping with Zina, but then to, of course, overlap with you was definitely a treat and an opportunity for us to even grow closer off the tennis court. But, it was a great opportunity for me. It was something that, I'm still on the board. I'm in my 15th or 16th and final year on the board. Wow. Yeah, that's a lot. And at the end of the year, I'll be gone. I came on as an elite athlete, as you did, or as we all did initially. But, to have an opportunity to really try and make a difference in our sport in the country, from someone who grew up in the park, came up through grassroots tennis, junior competition, high school, collegiate, professional, was a coach and a commentator. I thought I really had a lot to offer. And I thought I had an ear for everyone. And that was key. There wasn't a telephone call that I didn't take or an email that I didn't respond to, because I felt that everyone needed to be heard and everyone just wanted to be heard and to provide an opportunity to try to give those replies and translate them over into what we were doing within the USTA, and I think I did a pretty good job.
Yeah, I'd say so.
We also think that you did a great job, and I just also like for you to talk a little bit about, because last year we were able to actually finally have the Althea Gibson statue, and you were a big part of that. And one of the things that I love was seeing the letters that the kids wrote to you. Can you tell us how you felt about that?
Yeah, we've for many years, we wanted to be able to honor Althea Gibson out at the USTA Billie Jean King National Tennis Center, or at the U.S. Open. And, we have a policy that we don't name any courts anymore. Arthur Ashe Stadium is the only named court or stadia at the facility. The Louis Armstrong Stadium was there before we even moved to the site. We inherited it from the World's Fair. And so naming a court wasn't an opportunity. And over time, just trying to figure out what and how, it was challenging. It was challenging just because there's so many people, so many past players that are worthy of being recognized. But when you look at someone like Althea Gibson, who truly was the first one to break the barrier for colored people in our sport, that went above and beyond even what Arthur did. Arthur was the first male. Althea was the first. And I think that's the most important thing, and what she had to battle to be able to play in the U.S. Nationals and Wimbledon and the French Nationals and Australia. And she played everywhere. She played all over the world, played mostly out of the country, more so than she did in the country because she was respected more abroad, but of course couldn't really afford to keep that up over time. But she has 11 Grand Slam titles, singles, doubles, and mixed combined. And over time, learning and knowing how to communicate and knowing who to talk to, when I became the chairman and president, I knew that was a time to really start to forge forward, but not be aggressive and assertive, and try to figure out what that timing was. Because I didn't want it to be about me being another African-American woman trying to get Althea Gibson recognized. It was about recognizing this African-American woman who meant so much to humankind and humanity here in America and abroad for us. And I happen to be African-American, to be able to be that voice for her. So fast forward, I attended an event in Wilmington, North Carolina. One Love is an NJTL program down there, led by Lenny Simpson. And when I went a few years ago, I think Zina actually left your event in Houston going to Wilmington. I had like a 2 or 3 day trip in a row to these different NJTL programs. And to my surprise, when I arrived, it was a small reception with some board members and donors, and maybe a dozen young ladies out of the group, totally, for that particular night. And, I was there to kind of give an inspirational speech to them, but in return, I was the one that was inspired. These young ladies had written these letters to me, the USTA, to ask why hadn't anything been named after Althea Gibson. So I had about 12 young ladies that read theirs, and then I had a stack of probably 30, 40 more letters that had been written. And I was completely moved by that because I realized that it was even greater than me and what I thought, and perhaps even what you two ladies thought and felt about Althea Gibson. But to know that these 11, 12, 13-year-olds knew who she was. Now, granted, I was in Wilmington, North Carolina, where Althea spent a great period of her life there training with Dr. Eaton. However, it was just the sentiment behind it. And one of the young ladies, I'll never forget, she talked about, she goes, can we get something, even if it's just a hot dog stand? And I was like, oh my. I was like, baby girl, if we have something, it's definitely going to be greater than a hot dog stand. That really kind of lit a fire under me to come back and really try to make this happen. I met with Billie Jean King. We all know Billie when Billie speaks. And Billie's been fighting for this for many years to get Althea recognized. So when she realized that I was ready to move forward, it was just a matter of a conversation, a letter from her, me expressing my sentiment to the board, Billie coming in and backing it up and getting it passed unanimously, and which led to August 26, 2019, where we unveiled the beautiful statue of Althea Gibson.
Well, I just want to say, it also was a reunion for a lot of the African-American tennis players. We all were there and crying and telling stories, and we were all so proud. But one of the things that got me after that is everybody had pretty much gone, and I went over there and I sat down and just kind of stayed over by the statue for a while, and I saw Black, Asians, Latinos, everyone just coming over, and the older ones were telling the younger ones about who Althea was, and if they didn't know, they started Googling, and I just started boo-hooing. I'm like, this is like...
You boo-hooing Zina now.
We already talked about, don't share all my stories, okay? Yeah, I'm crybaby.
We got to get to some of those for sure. know. Oh my goodness.
Beautiful to see all of those, just see all different generations, didn't matter what race you were coming over and really like teaching about it. And I'm sure that's what you guys would like to have seen or did see when you thought about having it there. So thank
Absolutely,
you.
because it's a digital statue. I mean, there's not a lot of words out there, but each block, there's 6 blocks that are situated there, and each block there's a barcode, and each block tells the history, and that history can be updated and added and over time because it is digital. It comes right to your phone. And hopefully, we've gotten some great feedback from it. I didn't get to hang around that day. My mom had passed a few days before, and I rushed back to Chicago to prepare for the services. But it was beautiful to see, and I did come back the following week and walk out there and just kind of stand off at a distance to observe those that were in passing. So it was great.
Yeah, you had a lot going on, Kat. And we just appreciate the efforts that you continue to make to get that to happen. I know how dedicated you were in that. And, I'm kind of curious. I never got the chance to meet Althea. Zina, you, of course, knew her well, hit with her. She coached you. Katrina, did you have the chance to meet Althea at any point?
I met Althea once. I was about 10 years old in Chicago, and she came and did a clinic. And of course, at the rightful age of 10, I knew who Althea Gibson was, but I didn't really know who she was. So it wasn't until years later that I really understood the magnitude of that meeting, and I wish, I knew more and could have just really picked her brain then. But, when I came out on tour in particular and was kicking it with Zina, I was, she had me under her arm and dragging me everywhere I went, playing doubles. I got to learn a lot more about Althea because of the relationship that Zina had. And again, being brash and pretty cocky coming out on tour, you still didn't understand the significance of even my role of coming out and being successful on tour, knowing how few people of color and women in particular had done it before me. And so I got to learn more about Althea. And then when Zina got to the finals of Wimbledon, that was a year it all clicked to me and it says, oh my goodness, wow, this is huge.
No, that's amazing.
And then it was from that, it was from that moment forward where I became more interested in the history of Althea, what she had accomplished, and why, it had been such a long period between 1958 and 1990 when a Black woman reached the finals of Wimbledon, or a major period.
I mean, it's incredible. And so, Zina, you were talking about this story with Leslie Allen. We didn't get a chance to record it. We're going to get Leslie back on. But, I mean, I'm floored when I hear about you getting to the finals of Wimbledon and Althea's in the locker room before the match. Like, how nervous were you? And how did you handle sort of that moment and just trying to play good tennis with everything that you kind of knew that was on the line, history, for lack of a better word?
Well, I didn't play great tennis, and I was playing Navratilova, who beat me 34 times. But oh well. But
okay, let me point out, you beat Monica Seles, you beat Steffi Graf. You were playing great tennis, and
I meant in that match. But in that particular, and Billy touched on it too, it was just very interesting because I was okay until Althea walked into that locker room. And when she walked in the locker room and started talking about her champagne, and this is where, she celebrated and all of this, and all of a sudden, like Katrina said, then it hit me. I was like, Lord, this is Althea Gibson. I'm getting ready to go out that court. So everything just kind of like escalated at that point. And still one of my favorite memories, and someone recently just sent that picture as well when Leslie and I were talking about it, is Althea Gibson on one side and Arthur Ashe on the other side. So, it's just, we all three have had an amazing career, but just some of the barriers that we have broken. And Katrina, for you to finally be the one to break the USTA, to be the president, CEO of that board was, it just topped us all off. You probably didn't know it, but we was in the background going, "Ooh, okay, we got somebody up there." But so
it wasn't. Listen, first of all, it wasn't about a competition because I love to compete, so it wasn't about a competition getting there. But
really.
yeah. But you know what? Even I understood the magnitude of it going into it. Like I was telling someone the other day, I said when I was nominated to be the first vice president, knowing that I would ascend as long as I didn't kill anybody in the next 2 years, um, that was the moment for me because I was like, okay, I'm there. And then when that time came, I just kind of, put my shoes on or my roller skates, if you will, and ran with it and skated everywhere around the world as necessary or as was needed. So I didn't really, it was really after or maybe when I was winding down, when it's more about when other people are telling you what you've accomplished. And some of those meetings and they're kind of going over your accolades and things like Chanda kind of ran down early on. You're sitting there and you're going, wow, I did all that stuff. Because when you're in that moment, you're not thinking about that. It's kind of afterwards. And so thank you for elevating me. Thank you for believing in me and supporting me during that role because it wasn't an easy role. And I knew that I wasn't there for me. I knew that I was there for you all, for everybody that looked like me, for women, for former professional athletes. I wore a lot of different hats than just being the chairman and president of the USTA. And I wore that badge with pride every day. And I knew I had to step out and look my best every single day because I wasn't going to give anyone an opportunity to say anything negative about me because I didn't show up that day. And so, it was a difficult task for 2 years. And then, I had the fortune to do it for 4 years. And it was a lot of pressure, but hopefully, the legacy will live on, years from now.
Well, we're going to talk a little bit. I want to ask you one more question about your USTA and the role and all of that. And then we're going to dive into some old stuff and have a little more fun. But that match against that you actually had to stand there with Serena and also Naomi. And us knowing you, and you could tell the look on your face. And I was saying to myself, I said, I know Kat is trying to figure out, like, okay, how do I turn this into a positive? Was I right?
Ooh, girl. Let me tell you something. So first of all, you can read all about it in my new book that's coming out called Own the Arena. There is a dedicated chapter on that alone. It's coming out in 2021 now as opposed to July just because of the COVID-19. Books are on back order. But it's interesting the words that came out of my mouth in that speech, trying to manage what I'm experiencing, listening to 20,000 boos. Not so much for me, but for what just transpired on the court. We heard the boos early, and then, the crowd calms down, and Tom Rinaldi says, and the chairman and president of the United States tennis, whatever, and the boos go up, and I'm like, seriously, bro? You gonna give me the mic now? I'm like, for real? And in that moment, I'm like trying to keep a smile on my face and really, I'm still trying to digest what happened because I didn't see it. I was I was moving from the president's suite down to the court side, and all of that had transpired by the time I got down there, the loss of the game. So I was really confused, trying to get information from others, but I did the best that I could, and standing there, keeping a smile on my face, and trying to congratulate the ladies and Naomi on her first Grand Slam, and and really even in awe and admiration of how Serena handled it, and trying to get the crowd to come back to the moment and to the occasion and let go of everything that happened. So it was difficult.
Yeah, I mean that's a tough moment, and you don't have a script for that kind of thing. I mean, you're on the fly.
I had a script, and then I had to go off that script because I was trying to,
Yeah, I mean, it was incredible, and I thought you did a fantastic job of just kind of bringing things back in and trying to keep it, get it back to a positive place. But difficult circumstances for a lot of different reasons. But that's one of the reasons why, Kat, you were the president, because you could handle it.
Let me tell you something.
That's one of the reasons why
It
we
was
always
better.
call her.
Yeah, it was better that I was the president in that moment than anybody else.
That's
Well,
right. That's
Because
right.
it could have been really awkward for anybody before me or those that have come after me.
well,
That's a good
saying
point.
on
This
that,
happened for a reason.
that's why we always called you Hollywood. Just for we took that moment and you shined, so we knew you could handle it. But
And
you're
look.
right.
Okay. I gotta say this because Hollywood, I came onto the tour. It was Zina, it was Katrina after Zina, but I came on and you guys were both there at the same time. But it was kind of like a little bridge, and you had the big sister and the little sister to me, and it was that type of feeling. But the nicknames, Hollywood, I mean, I was like, what? Like we never did nicknames, so I'm like, huh? And I didn't have a lot of other black players that I played with. I can't really think of too many. So I come out onto the pro tour. I'm like, wow, this is like they are so cool, Hollywood, and then you got Zena calling me big hitter, and I was like, man,
There you go. But let me tell you where I got my name from. Patty Fendick. I played Patty Fendick in college tennis before being on tour, and I wore sunglasses everywhere, morning, noon, and night. And so Patty and I were at a tournament somewhere, and it was like dusk. I did not need to have my sunglasses on, and she's like, Hollywood. I'm like, she's like, nobody, only somebody who could be named Hollywood would wear their glasses at night. I was like, I wear my sunglasses at night. The song is out there too. And it stuck. And so she just started calling me Hollywood. And then everyone was like, oh my goodness, yes, that is your name. You are so Hollywood. And that's kind of where it was born.
love it, love it. So we have a couple of questions coming in. So I'm gonna stick with the first one, kind of lighthearted from Verna. That's who were some of the players that were the funniest on tour?
Laura McNeil.
By far, by far.
Laura McNeil by far is the funniest person on tour, especially in my era. Renee Stubbs would be a good second. Anytime you wanted to laugh, those were the two people that your go-to people that would definitely give you a laugh. So I'm gonna just go with those two right now.
And you don't get both of them together because you don't know what the heck is going on. Because
Now you don't get a word in edgewise. Absolutely. So I always say when I want to laugh, let me find Lori or let me find Stubbsy.
Well, we also have Adam who's wondering, Katrina, what do you consider your greatest accomplishment on the court and off?
It's twofold. Well, first of all, I would say my greatest accomplishments came with doubles partner on my left, Zina Garrison. My first year on tour was phenomenal with the tournaments that we won. We reached the semifinals of Wimbledon. We won the year-end doubles championships in Tokyo, the Bridgestone doubles championship the week after the Virginia Slims championships, and a few other titles in between. The first time Zina and I actually played together was at the Virginia Slims of Boca Raton. And, I'll never forget it. We were supposed to play in Australia, and then that didn't happen. And then we ended up coming back to play the first American tournament, which was in Boca Raton. And we were playing on a field court against a French team. I think it was Natalie Ehrman and Pascal Paradis. And I remember this vividly because I was so nervous. And, I'm fresh on tour and I don't really know all the rules, whatever, but I had to go to the bathroom so bad that I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't run. She's like, what's wrong with you? I was like, I got to go to the bathroom. She's like, well, go. I'm like, I can leave the court? She's like, yes, go. And the bathroom was like on the other side of like the ravine. So it wasn't like it was like 2 seconds away. It was like 5 minutes for me to get over there. And so now it's like a 10, 15-minute journey of me going and coming back. And I was so relieved when I came back. And then we won in 3 sets and we ended up winning the tournament and beating a few big names along the way. And I was like, okay, so this is how you do it up here on the big league, So that's some of my greatest accomplishments. I would say off the court, I think it's everything that I'm doing today. It's my role with the Harlem Dream Tennis and Education Program, which is an NJTL chapter here in New York, which is serving youth, inner city youth, providing them an opportunity to use tennis as a vehicle to earn a college scholarship. I grew up in a program very similar to this in Chicago, and I've been there since the end of 2005. And so it's something I'm very passionate about, and try to give back. Chanda, we honored you last year, and you've been there as a celebrity, and Zina's been there as a celebrity. So, I mean, it's really about giving back and making a difference. And I will say, obviously, what we've already talked about as my role at the USTA.
Well, I will say this, Katrina, you have to tell the story of Tokyo. How we spent more time trying to figure out if we're going to make the flight. Because we were trying to get on that plane to go see Prince.
Oh, that's in the book, Zina. That's in the book. I'll give an excerpt, but that's in the book, girl. And let me tell you something about this child right here. Let me tell you something. Zina had just, 19, so that's the second Tokyo tournament. That's not the one, that's not the end of the year. That was a Pan-Pacific Open, which was in January or February, which was after the Australian Open. So Zina had just gotten engaged in December, and we go to Australia, for a month? 3 weeks. Yeah. And then we go straight to Tokyo. Well, Zina had planned a party like the Monday after Tokyo, Monday or Tuesday after the Tokyo, which was, full week. So we're having a great, I don't know if it was an engagement. I don't remember what type. I think it was an engagement party. But she was like, I got to get back to my man. Okay, I got to get home. I got to make that flight. So we went in, we beating everybody. And everybody, I mean, we're talking about everybody's at this tournament. You got Martina, you got Chrissy.
Huge tournament. Yeah.
It's a huge tournament. It was like a tier one. So we're in the finals. We're playing Mary Jo Fernandez and Cody Kilch.
Oh, yeah.
And there are no pushovers, right? Cody Kilch was one of the half of the Twin Towers. So Zina's like, girl, I gotta get my flight. So the singles went 3 sets, which was the first, and she's just nervous wreck. I gotta get my flight. And it was, the 3-set match, long match, trophy ceremony, whatever, and then we go out and play. Yep. 7-6 in the third. We won, but 7-6 in the third. I don't even remember. Zina shook everybody's hand. We won, and Zina shook hands and ran off the court and went straight to the airport. She did not pass calls. She did not collect $200. She didn't stop. They had a car outside waiting, and she went straight. I was like there to do the trophies. I was like, I can't leave these people. I'm like, first of all, we just won. I'm getting my food.
You want to stay for that, Zina.
The interesting part is we were literally playing the points, but Katrina was like, okay, so when we win this point, you're going to go and you just get ready and you just take off. I got everything else. So I was like, okay. And literally someone called, and the airport is far away from Tokyo at that time. And so they called, and do you know that the pilot waited on me? I got on that plane. Yes. He held the plane because he was a fan. But the bad thing about it, I'll never forget, I got on that plane, nice and funky, still had my I asked the lady to put me in the back. I was in first class. I was like, please give me way back on there. So finally, and I changed clothes on that plane. But that's what it was. I was also trying to get back to a Prince concert. So.
Oh, Prince concert. I knew it was something. Yeah.
It wasn't just your name.
Whatever it was. Not that she couldn't have seen Prince somewhere else, but he was at home. She was gonna have the VIP service at home, so it was all good.
Speaking of parties, I actually was talking to Serena the other day, and we talked about this. You guys remember that I used to say everybody we meet and we'd have food on that Sunday at Wimbledon, and we all get together.
Sunday.
Oh my God, that was like the best time, like ever. So, and I remember just inviting whoever that would want to come of color, and just, that was our time to just kind of get together and just,
I have to say, it was like a whole new world for me, okay? Because, I'm coming from juniors. I'm transitioning onto the tour. I've been traveling one other player at times, but still pretty singular, pretty individual. Not a lot of black folks, not a lot of black players around. I'm always one of the few or one of the only. And so to come onto tour, and I mean, you got this dinner on Sunday, and I was like, what? I mean, I didn't even hardly go out to dinner, let alone go to a group or a little party or whatever. You did some sponsored things that I started getting into early on. But I mean, this was like mind blowing. Like, I was like, they got this many black people playing tennis at this level? Like, I mean, it
was
was
standing room
amazing.
only.
Yeah, I mean, it
Standing
was
room only
amazing.
because
And
everybody would show up, and a couple years my mom would be there on the weekends, so
yeah,
she was in the kitchen cooking. Zina would be in the kitchen cooking. Verna would be. I mean, we would just have potluck,
it's
if you will, with
incredible.
everybody and anybody, Venus, Serena, their moms, sisters, whoever was there. We would all convene on that Sunday and just have a good old down home soul food dinner.
Well, and we talk, Zena, we've talked on a couple of our shows about, the history, understanding, learning the history of the game, players that came before you. And, for me, it was sort of eye-opening for that as well, to kind of actually know players who had been playing, who had been winning tournaments like, you and of course Zena, who I'd practiced with early on, but, Leslie Allen, and just to know and have kind of that hands-on experience, for me, that was huge. I didn't often, watch a lot of tennis. I kind of stayed focused on my game, especially, as a junior. My parents tried to kind of keep the blinders on, but we kind of talk about how good it is for young players to kind of know that, to kind of feel like they're part of something where you don't feel like you're inventing the wheel. All of this pressure is on you. If you don't make it, nobody makes it, that kind of thing. And I just felt like it was so important, those moments, during the course of my career, especially early on.
Yeah,
Great
it's been
moments.
really good. Katrina, I'd like to ask you this question. We've asked our other guests this. Like, right now, how important do you think it is for our younger players or younger individuals to know their history?
Oh, it's vital. I think, every generation needs to know their history. Zena, you and I in particular came up through the ATA days. We played a lot of the ATA tournaments. I think I played every age group from 10 and under to 18 and under to the women. Won all of those. Never won the women's. Don't remind me of the finals that I lost to Melissa Brown, but that's okay. That's a whole other story.
Bringing up
But
memories.
it was important because I tell the story. I recently told the story that when I started playing tennis, I didn't know anything about black versus white or that it wasn't necessarily a black sport. I grew up in the west side of Chicago in a black program. My summer program was black. The first tournament I played was in New Orleans, which was the ATA, which was black. So
There
when
we
I started playing USTA tournaments or the local district tournaments, and it with no black people, I was like, where
You thought
everybody
something
at?
was wrong.
There was something wrong. So it's important to know our history and because that's where I learned it basically through ATA and knowing all those great champions that came before us. But as we've progressed and moved forward, one of the important things that the NJTL has done is they have the Arthur Ashe essay contest. So these young people from all over the country get to write about Arthur Ashe. One year they wrote about Charlie Passerelle. And many of the programs in Harlem in particular, we used to do for Black History Month, that the players had to choose, or our students had to choose a player of color, male or female, to write about an additional essay so that they would know their history. And so, it wasn't just about the African Americans because we wanted to include Yannick and Ronan Agenor and all those other great Black players that have played. We also had Black history in school. So we used to learn a lot more, and it's not in the schools today. So, I urge every coach that's out there and every parent that has a child of color to make sure that they recognize their history so they can understand it. Because, 50 years from now, I want to make sure they know who the three of us are. And if we stop teaching our history, then this piece of history will be lost.
And it's funny you say that because a couple of years ago I was at the ATA in Baltimore. I think it was their 100th year or something. And I was walking over to where I saw Willis Thomas, John Wilkerson, Richard Williams, all together. And I was just like, oh my God, this is like people don't understand. And they're just sitting there talking, but all of these players, had touched, somebody in the black tennis world that made an impact. And I never forget that. And some couple people took a picture. So if anybody's out there and you have a picture, I'd love to have one. But just to think, just those at that particular time. And since now we have Kamal Murray that, is a coach that has succeeded and for the U.S. Open for Sloan, but it hasn't been a lot. And a lot of times people a lot of times people say, why do you guys talk about that so much? But sometimes it's just, from where we've come and the understanding we know how it's taken for us to get there. Sometimes it's just familiarity more than anything. And it's hard to explain that to people.
Yeah.
Particularly when you're looking at the black coaches on the professional tour, they're so few and far between. You had Roger Smith, who was out there, and now Kamal. And then I look at Jermaine and Jameer Jenkins, who've been hitting partners for the Williams sisters. And Jermaine ascended to be a coach. Jameer is still Serena's hitting partner. But there's so many more capable coaches that need the opportunity to get out there and show what they're made of.
Yeah,
well, I think, Benny Sims, who really was instrumental in me understanding even more about, the history and even before, the players that I directly was able to meet and interact with, players before and, what happened at each level, because all of that kind of played a role in, Zina becoming, the player she was, from John, Wilkerson and, where he played and some of his teammates and, Benny and some of the guys he played with who went on to help players. And I just would have never known that, but for being around someone who was so aware and who was a part of it.
Yeah, when I look at the three of us, you look at the coaches that we had, all of our coaches on tour in particular were of color. Chanda, you had Marcel before Benny. Zina obviously had John and Willis. I had Willis, worked with John when I was at home, and then Charlton Eagle. And it's, I think it's also a part of our responsibility to make sure that we are paying it forward with who we have the opportunity to work with, particularly once you're in control of that. And so when Sloan brought Kamal on, my hat went off to her as far as bringing Kamal on, who had worked alongside Zina when Zina was working with Taylor. And, it's about having that opportunity to have the exposure.
Well, Chanda, I'm going to jump in, and I normally don't do this, but we have a good friend of ours, Andy, from Australia.
Andy.
He said that the support you all had for each other while on tour and the support you and your coaches always gave up coming black is very inspirational. And also to have people like Andy, who became our lifelong friends from Australia and all over the world. We had a lot of people that help inspire us. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It can go on and on. Roger Smith, who was a USTA coach, he worked with Sloan. It's amazing when you think about, all of the hands that sort of went into, creating some of these situations. And we've got a few players, Zina, who've been listening. I mentioned, Leslie Allen was on. Sophie Amiak has been on. Carol Lewis came in again.
Katrina, that's another funny one, Sophie.
Sophie's hilarious. Yes.
So a lot of good stories, but it's interesting. I definitely want to hear some of the stories between Zina from your perspective, because we heard a little bit from Katrina's perspective, but from yours, just sort of early on and when you first kind of saw Katrina come. Where did y'all first meet? How was the interaction? How did your relationship sort of progress?
Well, I actually my memory is not good. Katrina will tell you that, but it's always, but I remember, kind of vividly remember meeting her. I don't know, was it Chicago, Katrina?
I don't remember. First time I saw
Remember?
you, first time I remember seeing you, well, I mean, you were still in juniors playing winning the Easter Bowl in New Jersey,
Okay.
maybe in 80 or 81. But we
So
never really
way
met.
back
It was
then.
just I knew who you were.
But the thing that I remember from Katrina straight up is like she was not afraid to approach you. You know, she had that nice, confident, straight
You mean
posture
swagger.
walking.
You mean a
Yes,
swagger. Let's call it
straight.
what it is.
But she was the thing that I loved about Katrina is she was never afraid to approach somebody. And I was the shy one. So, you just tell Katrina like, "Oh, Katrina, look who's over there. Go over there." I don't even know if you remember this. Remember when we used to watch Soul Food, and so Boris Kojo was in the audience, and I told you that I always wanted to meet him. Well, I didn't even get it out of my mouth. Katrina was over there and she's pointing to me, and Zina's over there. Da, da, da. But that's what made Kat, great. I always tell people Katrina is a good dot to dot person. She's not afraid to connect people with other people, and that's a good trait. But one particular thing I have to tell this, is I had an event that we had in Houston, Texas, and we had it at this hotel not far from my house. Katrina made all the drinks. You remember that, Katrina?
I remember
Made
too.
all the martinis. Um, that particular party is still, everybody talks about it. If I see people, that were at that party, everybody talks about that party. And
I
one
think
thing
I
I
was
It
too
always
was
young
the
to
good
be at that
diamond
party.
chocolate martinis. I mean, hey, they
that's
Wasn't
were
I
good.
too? Wasn't I
but
too young to be at that party? But
Yeah,
I
you weren't
was.
there.
okay,
I
we're
think
not
I was
even
10.
talking about you because I don't know if you were of age, but anyway. But the thing that I remember more than anything is Katrina walking around with the glass, making sure everybody's glass was full, and then everybody laid out. So, Katrina was always keeping the party
She takes
going and
care
the
of
life of
people.
the party.
She
But,
takes care of people, Zena. That's what Katrina
but
does.
the,
She gonna take
but
care
the,
of you.
exactly.
Hospitality.
Hospitality. But the great thing about Katrina also, we could be all laid out or whatever. If somebody had a match or something, Kat saw everybody matches. I never knew how she did that. She would be at everyone's match and was watching everybody's matches. You must have saw a lot of
It's a
matches in them
gift.
days.
I've
It
seen a
is.
lot of yellow fuzzy tennis balls hit in my life, and it did start. It started on tour because I just always felt that because there were so few of us out there that it was important that we supported one another. And you're right. I would sometimes leave my court, whether I won or lost, had not even gone to the locker room. I checked the score first of you or Lori or Chanda or whoever was playing or Jerry. And if it was early on in the match, I would quickly go take a shower. But if it was already like in the second set or something, I'd run over there. And I think that's, I would love for our juniors to understand why it's so important to go out and support one another. So
And
Well,
it wasn't just the black people's matches that you watched.
it
You
was my
watched,
friends. It was definitely
yeah,
my friends.
yeah,
But
you
yeah.
did.
yeah.
So you did a great job with
Well,
that.
I,
Now me
I
on
wanna
the other hand, okay.
well, I wanna ask one more question from my audience, and then I have a question for both of you. We have about 12, 13 more minutes. But so the question from Brothers on Tennis is, would you be interested in a similar event, an event similar to the Laver Cup, called the Gibson Cup
For women.
for women?
Yeah, of course. I mean, we've been talking about that is not overlooked about having a women's cup or an event very similar in the format to the Labor Cup, whether it's named after Althea or they've been throwing Billy's name around and all the great legends that have been there. But it's definitely important to make sure that we honor Althea's name any way that we can, but also by making sure that the women have a platform to do that.
Yeah. Well, we have also, okay, so Pam Gates is on. She's asking about the boxing gloves behind you, Katrina.
I knew
But we
somebody was
also,
going to ask you.
yeah, somebody's asking, do you box? But we also have Luke Jensen on, and this was a heckler. Okay, we're gonna talk about funny people on tour. But he's saying, please break down the Katrina strut. I don't think I could do that. I don't
Hey,
think
Luke was my mixed doubles partner. So he knows all about that strut. I mean, it can't be. It's actually I walk like my father, believe it or not. It can't be duplicated. That's for sure. I duplicated my dad's, which is very difficult. But it's because it's about the bow legs. But my boxing gloves behind me, Exhibit A, are autographed by the one and only Muhammad Ali. So something that I cherish and I keep them out. When I just to remind me of the person that he was and the great champion that he was and what he represented.
That is fantastic. Now, so I want to ask one more kind of maybe deep question of you two, because you're both pioneers, trailblazers, in slightly different ways. But as two Black women who've sort of been the first, in different ways. Zina, you the first since Althea, the first in the open era to get to a major final, first Black woman. I mean, it's huge. Katrina, you're the first Black woman to ascend to that position, first person of color total to ascend to the top position at the USTA. Did you sometimes feel like you had to be a little less Black? Like to try to be accepted more, to try to get things that you felt you should get, to try to get things past, Katrina. I mean, for both of you, I mean, was that a factor or, how much did that come into play?
Well, I knew Katrina going to look at me.
I'm going to look you in the eye on this one.
And look, Katrina, let me mention this. Katrina, let me mention. So from this podcast, these guys, they had this quote, the body serve, moving away from Blackness to make you more palatable to white audiences. And I thought,
what the hell does that mean? See, my thing is, what does that mean? I am who I am.
Exactly.
Yeah, I am who I am. So if I seem a little less Black, whatever that means, it's not because I'm trying to be something other than what I am. And I think both of you know me extremely well. Just because I'm articulate and I'm smart and I can converse with anybody and represent doesn't mean that I'm less Black. And I used to say years ago, I said, I could have tea at the White House this afternoon and be at a Jay-Z concert tonight and still be the same person. So it's really about understanding your truth and who your self is and how you represent yourself and how you're representing others. So I'm never going to say that I'm a little less Black because I am Black. You can't take that away from me, and I am unapologetically Black.
Yeah.
Well,
Zina,
I would say because I'm a little bit older than y'all, so I kind of get where they're coming from because every article, instead of saying that, you are an American tennis player, they would say you're a Black American tennis player. And so, you did sometimes it has to be dialed down, but I was taught at a very young age by John Wilkerson. And then as I got older, I had a lot of great mentors, from Barry Gordy to Maya Angelou to my godparents, Alan Bell and Nellens, be me and just enjoy being me. And I don't have to bring myself down or put myself in a box to make other people feel good. So, and Katrina can tell you because people used to always tell her that, Zina doesn't talk much, but when I do talk, I got something to say. So I would actually, that was kind of my defense on that. My mom taught me at a very young age, you can't say nothing good, don't say nothing at all.
No, I totally understand. It's interesting to hear both of your perspectives. I think, from my perspective, I definitely understand, the question a little bit because, there's a certain way we maybe are when we are around people we know, people we're comfortable with. And that goes for anybody, Black, white, whatever the case may be. You're going to be, a little more yourself. You're going to be a little more maybe, bombastic or whatever your personality is. You're going to be more relaxed. And so I think as a person of color, sometimes you go into situations and you just aren't as relaxed. And we kind of encounter that a lot, versus if we were surrounded by a lot of people of color or diverse people, even if we didn't know them, you're surrounded by diversity. It's just, for me, more relaxing. I feel more comfortable versus if I'm the only Black person walking into the room. Now, I'm not going to show it, right? I think we've all kind of experienced that. However, it's not quite the same. And so I kind of look at it from that perspective. We had a question from one of our audience who's listening in, sort of my answer to that question being the first full-time Black analyst on Tennis Channel. Now, Katrina, you came before me as an analyst on Tennis Channel and actually, kind of helped me get my chops a bit. But, certainly you think about it, I guess, sometimes. Sometimes I think, okay, how am I going to wear my hair? Do I want braids or do I want to go with the smoother look? Now, I've worn my natural and I feel great. I feel more empowered. But it's kind of little things like that, I think, sometimes that come into play for us that people might not think about.
No, absolutely.
Okay,
Absolutely.
next time, warn me when I have water in my mouth and you talking about our hair, because that's a whole other conversation.
No warnings, Zina. No warnings here. No filters here.
Wait, and one quick story I want to ask Katrina. Remember? Do you remember we played a doubles match at the U.S. Open on Grandstand Court, and Bootsy Collins showed up?
Bootsy. Yes, yeah, and you ran, yeah, and I had the block for Zina again, right? The Bootsy Collins, the Funkadelics, was high over Zina and really wanted to meet her, and he was in the crowd looking all loud as Bootsy is, and that's in the book too, Zina. On the arena. You want to read it?
Okay, we're gonna wait. We're gonna hold you so they can buy this book. Okay.
Yeah, no, I remember blocking for you there. Absolutely.
Okay. We've had some good times, but
one last thing though, I really want Katrina to ask you about. You have been vocal last couple of days I've seen about having had the coronavirus and how you got through, that scary, uncertain period, and where you are, sort of where your mind is in terms of that. How are you feeling, and what was that like?
Well, first of all, I'm grateful, and I just want to send condolences to all those who have actually lost loved ones during this horrific pandemic. I just got a message from Sylvester Dorsey. He lost his father just a while ago to that. Kim Sands lost her father last week, and many other people that we know have lost loved ones from this. I got it early on in March before the numbers really started to rise in the U.S. And at that time, it was being touted as an elderly was more severe for the elderly people than the younger people, and so I wasn't as stressed then. I think if I had gotten it a week later, I would have been a lot more stressed. But I had minor symptoms compared to what what you're seeing on television. I had severe body aches 2 nights, only after when the sun went down. It was very interesting. The first night I took some Advil, which I heard was the worst thing that you could do. Was able to go to sleep, but the second night it was even more severe when I knew something was wrong. I thought maybe because I had been traveling, I'd been up overnight. I was supposed to go to Switzerland for an ITF board meeting that Saturday, and on that Thursday I decided not to go. And I'm grateful that I didn't go because I would have been a carrier. But I had been informed that I'd been around someone who had contracted it, who had tested positive. Immediately was on self-quarantine. But on the second night, the pain was so severe, I was literally on all fours and in tears, and I knew something was wrong. And it was at that point that I was like, I must have it. I know I have it because look, we've run enough hills and mountains and lifted weights that all those workouts combined did not feel like what I was experiencing. So I was able to go to the hospital the next day and get tested. I was in and out in about 2 hours. They did a chest X-ray and EKG, all the things to make sure my lungs are clear, because that's where the problems really arise. And I wasn't really carrying a fever. That sweat out a fever. I woke up wet, that drenched, thinking, and I said I must have had a fever that broke, and that's what made me realize I probably needed to go and get tested just to really understand and know, okay, I've got it. Let me get my mindset one way. If you don't know and you're having the symptoms, I think it can be a lot more scarier for those. But having had it, self quarantine, I was able to go. They had a survey online if you wanted to donate plasma, or get your blood tested to see if your plasma would be good. And I tested negative, and I had enough of the antibodies that I was carrying that could help others. And so I immediately went and donated my plasma, which is a photo that I posted on social media. And I was smiling. Unfortunately, you couldn't see it under the mask, but it did get everybody's attention. But it was a matter of saying, listen, there are survivors from this, and there is good that can come out of it. And that was the reason why I posted it. I wanted others to know that if they've had it, please donate your plasma so that we can help others, so that we can save lives, stay home, wash our hands, and, stay connected through the mediums as we're doing right now.
Well, also, Katrina, we're so happy that, everything came out great for you. But also our good friend Nisi, she also has it in Atlanta. So pray for her. She's going through it right now. I think she's like on her 10th day. And so I've been keeping in contact with her. But this has been a pleasure talking to you.
No, it's been fun. I wish we could do it in person, but it probably wouldn't be it'd be a lot more fun. But this is good. It was great to be able to share some of our stories. We all go way back, and I'm very proud of what each of you have accomplished and what you're accomplishing now, and bringing this forum together to bring others on and have a nice chat, laid back chat. So with Billy and Jackie, and I'm not sure who's your next one.
We're working on it's Pam Schreiber.
Oh, good. So I'll be tuning in, and it's been great. So thank you for having me, guys.
Thank you. Yeah, this has been a fantastic show once again, Zina. I want to remind everybody, follow us on social media, Game.Set.Chat, Game.Set.Chat Live. We're going to be posting all of our shows coming up. Thank you for also supporting Zina Garrison Academy. Go and donate if you are so inclined, if you're able, if you enjoy what we're doing here. And I'm going to let you take them out, Zina. Take us out.
Thank you for joining Game.Set.Chat at a distance. Thanks, Kat. That was good.
That was awesome. Good stuff,
Thank
ladies.
you.
Keep it going.
That's awesome. Yeah.